Hello and welcome back to the Holistic Homes Podcast. I'm Christine, licensed general contractor and holistic construction consultant. And today we are talking about a very special topic that might not pertain to everyone, but I promise there's a ton of value in sticking around. And today we're going to talk about why being your own general contractor is just a terrible idea. I know that several people have reached out to me over the past couple of weeks, and I'm noticing a bit of this shift in wanting to be your own GC, is what it's referred to as. Wanting to be your own GC, and 100% of the time I'm finding that the reason behind that is because they have been burned in the past. But we're going to talk through all the slight concerns that you want to consider and just really flesh through what's really behind the desire to want to general contract your own project. It is a big undertaking. So on paper, I understand that wanting to manage your own project sounds like it could be a really great idea, because who knows better than you what you actually want on your project than you? And that's very much true. But that doesn't mean that you should take on all of the risk, the liability, stress, and work of actually heading up the construction on your project. So you might also think that being your own GC is going to save you a ton of money. It's going to save you money. It's going to help you stay in control of the outcome of your project, and you're going to make sure that it actually gets done right. That's most commonly what I see is like the driving factor behind wanting to do that. The reality is it is actually one of the quickest ways to have your project spiral completely out of control. So first, let's start with what is just the overall process. And I'll focus on if you're going to be doing a new build, but this also pertains to a renovation as well. So the overall big picture, like construction timeline and process, is that you got to have a piece of land. Maybe you already have a piece of land and there's a home on it and you're going to renovate that home. Or maybe there's a piece of land and nothing is developed on it and you're going to build brand new ground up home. So you have a piece of land, then you're going to get an architect that's going to draw up your vision and how the home's actually going to be constructed. Floor plan, elevations, there are going to be some architectural details in there on how it's going to be built. And there's going to be a couple other elements related to electrical and mechanical and plumbing. So now you'd have your plans of how the home's going to be built. Those plans then need to be submitted to potential GCs. You got to know how much this home's going to be to build it. And so that would be the next step in the sequence, is getting proposals and bids from general contractors saying, here's what I want. Here's ideally your plans have everything down to like insulation and material selections. You might even have an interior designer that has selected interior finishes. All of that package, which is referred to as your CDs or your construction documents, that goes over to the general contractor, ideally more than one, and they are looking at all of the plans, looking at square footage, and they're doing what's referred to as a takeoff. They're looking at the plans, taking off the quantities, and then they're turning around a bid to you. What they are also doing behind the scenes is they are taking your plans and submitting it to subcontractors. Because truth is, your general contractor, they are not out there swinging the hammer all by themselves. So that general contractor is using labor and subcontractors to actually build your home. So they take your plans and submit it to a framer. They submit it to drywall crew, flooring, like all of the different trades that are needed to build your home. Ideally, they are submitting your plans to then obtain pricing and bids so they know how much to charge you and give you a proposal for the project. Then construction begins and we know what happens after that. So what does it look like if you actually cut out that general contractor piece altogether? I'm going to paint a picture for you that I hope actually turns you off completely from wanting to GC your own project, but I'm going to share with you what I think you're actually asking for and how you can still achieve that while hiring a general contractor. So let's paint the picture of if you say, forget it, Christine, I want to actually GC my own project. I hear what you're saying, but I want to do it myself. Okay, so this is what that picture is going to look like. I would say I most commonly hear this from somebody who has some construction background. I've heard it from contractors who do commercial work and they say, I'm going to GC my own residential project. I've heard it from people that say, I have a little bit of experience or knowledge, a little bit of construction background. I've heard it from people that have no knowledge or background of construction as well. So this is going to apply to everyone. If you're going to GC your own project, this is what you actually need to know. It is going to be a full-time job, and I hope you have no other work obligations. Being a GC is going to require a whole lot of time because you are going to be responsible for scheduling out all of the trades, all of the subcontractors responsible for getting your project all the way to completion and not stop in the momentum. Like a really good construction project breaks ground, starts its foundation, gets into framing, and it just does not stop until it's completed, 12 or 18 months later, typically. So you are going to be responsible for scheduling all of the trades in the right sequence. There's no better way to get your crews really irritated if you've got a drywall guy coming in before the insulation guy is complete, and there's just this really delicate dance in scheduling that needs to happen for a smooth construction project. So scheduling and sequencing trades correctly. That is a very big task of a GC. Next is going to be resolving the conflicts that happen all throughout the project on different trades. Because you have multiple companies and subcontractors coming in to do work on the project, there is inevitably conflicts. What I mean by that is the framer didn't frame something correctly, and now the insulation crew is there and something needs to be corrected and the framer needs to come back out. It happens all the time. We're very adamant on the consulting side to sequence the order of work as well, meaning that we're very adamant about the mechanical design having a very high priority, which in typical scenarios, it's not always a high priority. And so what I mean by that is that the mechanical design actually takes place during the designing and the planning and is also incorporated into the structural drawings as well. So the structural engineer is aware of where the mechanical ductwork is running, and to really avoid conflicts in, oh, oops, there's this giant beam right where we need to have ductwork running. So that's a part of the coordination during the planning, but there can very much be conflicts during construction, meaning, oh, there is this beam right here that's needed and we need to run ductwork or electrical or X, Y, and Z right in that area. That's what had happened on this project where the contractor had not actually referenced the plans that showed where framing needed to be clear for the mechanical designer. So what needed to happen is a whole lot of rework of the mechanical to coordinate with the structural. That's a big, long-winded way to say, be prepared for conflicts all throughout construction. Your job as a general contractor is to help minimize and resolve those quickly because they happen. It's not always like this malicious intent to make things not go smoothly, but you've got a lot of parts and pieces between your HVAC, your plumber, your electrician, your insulation, framers, everyone. So it's a little bit of a beautiful dance that needs to happen on the scheduling side, then also resolving conflicts. Then you are also going to be responsible for coordinating inspections through the city or the county. You're going to need to coordinate those inspections. Any change orders, meaning we've got a change right here. somebody's going to have to pay that expense. Who's going to manage that? You also, a very big one that gets overlooked is the delivery and procurement of building materials. It is a full-time job just in ordering, tracking, and receiving building materials. Many construction firms have somebody dedicated to all of the ordering and tracking of materials. So you as a GC would be responsible for ordering the lumber package, making sure that it gets delivered prior to the framers being on site, and making sure that nothing needs to be rejected or returned or exchanged. That is just the framing package. There is 1,000 other deliveries that are going to be happening, and you are going to be responsible for submitting the orders, making sure that they are in accordance to the plans. Then you have to pay for the order. Then you have to follow up with the order and make sure that it gets delivered and nothing is missing, and a lot more into making sure that when the subcontractor shows up on site to start running electrical, that all of the material, they're likely supplying quite a bit of it, but everything that they need is on site. So that's a big piece to it as well, is ordering and procuring the material on site. It is not always done by the subcontractor. And then the big one is just handling delays, because you are running a project that requires easily 10 to 20 other companies and subcontractors to be involved as well. So if there are delays, it can then delay all of the other subcontractors that are coming behind them. So you got to start managing that as well. So that is also why your contractor is very likely giving you a construction schedule that shows like the sequencing, and if there is a delay, it delays everything else. So that is a quick little synopsis of what a GC is really responsible for doing on your project. Overall, if we were to look at the big picture, a GC, they are not the ones, like I said, out there swinging the hammer and typically the ones doing the manual labor. They are charging a fee, typically somewhere between I would say 10 to 20%, maybe more, to manage your entire project and all of the subcontractors. I think that is money very well spent, because it is truly a full-time job. So that's something that you really need to be aware of if you are considering going down this path. And that is just related to the workload that would be on your plate. Something that we haven't talked about yet is the liability. Contractors are really responsible and on the hook for a ton of liability. So if there is an issue in a project, God forbid there's a building defect, then let's say it's related to a plumbing issue, could even be an electrical issue. It is not just the plumber or the electrician who gets involved in a litigation issue. It's also the general contractor. Whatever happens on that project, the general contractor is responsible, as well as the trades below them. So that is why they carry a lot of insurance. There's also workers' comp insurance that's typically involved in somebody being a general contractor. And then also just the really umbrella that is covering and protecting them on whatever could go wrong on your project. Of course, this is not legal advice when it comes to being your own GC, but I want to shed some light on the fact that going down that path, you're going to take on a ton of work and you're going to take on a ton of liability. So if somebody does get injured or hurt on your project and you are the general contractor, or in what some cases could be like the owner builder, the risk goes to you because you don't have a general contractor holding that insurance to protect you on your project. So let's talk about some of the mistakes that could come from being your own GC. If I haven't deterred you from doing it yet, this one might help. Okay, so some of the things that could potentially really backfire in wanting to manage your own project is that you need to understand that you are taking on the role of quality control and managing your subcontractors. So let's say the reasoning behind you wanting to go down this path is because you've been burned by a contractor in the past. They did terrible work, you don't trust them, and you feel like if you were in that position, you would just get it right. And I totally understand that. But there is a better way to have control over the project without having to step into the GC role. So one of the things that isn't really thought through, I think, completely in this decision is if you're going to be the GC because you want to build a better home, you want to have high performance building materials, you want to use better strategies, I'm all for that. Something that might not be understood is that you are going to be responsible for training those subcontractors, especially if you are going to be responsible for obtaining, like you're going to have to go find the plumber and the framer and the installation crew. If you're going to go out and find these crews and then bring them into a project that they do not have familiarity with doing better building details, they're going to be looking to you as the general contractor to guide them and show them what you are expecting. That is a big piece that often gets overlooked, and that is something that you may not be equipped to show them to do. So let's talk about an example, would be on the framing side. If you want to use better building materials, you want to go above and beyond just standard building code that has like a synthetic house wrap, and you want to use a zip system, great. You then bring in a framing crew and say, all right, we're gonna get going on this project and we're going to, you're gonna install this zip system. They may have never installed that before. And they are going to, one, either look to you for guidance on the quality control and how it should be installed, or two, they're not going to ask you for guidance and they're just going to wing it because they're the framers and they're going to say, let's give this a go. That could very easily lead to disaster. So if you are wanting to bring in all of the trades, be prepared to also train them to the standards that you are expecting, because it's highly likely that they don't have familiarity with doing work other than what's required by code. And in the world of building a healthy home and a home that's more robust than the standard, it's going to require trades that go above and beyond. So that's one element. Also, as a contractor, this is a bit of the dynamic that happens. As a general contractor, your job is to build and renovate homes. And you, over time, develop really solid relationships with the local suppliers, where you're getting your building materials. You have reps at the local lumber yard. You have really solid relationships with your subcontractors. Every contractor's got like an A team and a B team, and like, this is my preferred electrical contractor. We've been working together for 5 years. They know our expectations and our standards and our projects. And so they know the quality of work that we are expecting. So what happens there is this like really meaningful relationship builds, and it is this give and take in that the general contractor relies on that electrician to do quality work. That electrician is really incentivized to do quality work because they are going to continuously get fed more and more business if they continue to do better and better work. That is the dynamic, and it works really, really well. If you are a homeowner and you are going to start to pick all of these trades, that incentive isn't there because these subcontractors don't think they are going to have this continuation of work into the future. So their incentive to go above and beyond, take to heart your expectations, redo work that was not done correctly, their incentive to do that is at an all-time low. I know that doesn't sound great, but that is just reality of how business is functioning out there, because they're not going to, you don't have a plethora of projects, maybe you do, but you don't have this continuation of work for them. You are building one single family home and then they're done. So that's an unfortunate piece to that. I think that goes back to why there's a ton of value in hiring a general contractor. Okay, so maybe I've deterred you from taking it on, maybe I haven't, but either way, let me give you a better scenario, like what to do instead of taking on this mountain of a role of being your own GC. So what to do instead is vet and hire a very skilled general contractor with incredible subs. And one of the great ways to vet that is actually go and visit other projects of theirs that are under construction. I'm not talking about finished projects where you walk in and it's like, ooh and ah, and this is so beautiful. We don't care about that right now. We want to know about the construction quality, what's behind the walls, like, are there subcontractors doing really quality work? And best way for that to be apparent is what's behind the walls. Sure, the finishes matter, but those are often different trades. So hiring a really skilled general contractor who has impeccable project management skills, that is a big requirement. But what can you do? You can take on the role as an owner's rep. Sometimes this is somebody completely different, but you as the owner should always have full control and full reins on really the quality control of the build. Sometimes that is done through an independent owner's rep. Sometimes you as a homeowner take on that role. But that allows you to be very involved, very informed, and ask proactive questions so that you can still take on this management role without having to take on really all of the burden. So that can help you get a better understanding of trades. That can also help you get an understanding on expectations. So the sooner that you can lay out those expectations and feed them through the general contractor, then that's how they get incorporated into your project. So I think that what I hear from this deep desire to, I'm going to GC my own project, I want to have control over the outcome, I want to manage the subcontractor's quality of work, I think all of that can still very much happen, but you don't have to sit in the role of a GC. The GC is often, again, charging somewhere between like 10 to 20% of the project. And so I would encourage you to run some of those numbers. Does that make sense for you from even a numbers standpoint? Because that 20% over a maybe 12 to 18 month period, what else could you be doing with that time? Like, it usually does not work out in the favor of not hiring a general contractor. So, and some good next steps would be to run the numbers, see if it even financially makes sense for you to take on that full-time role and not pay the 20%. Also consider the risk associated with being your own GC. Consider the subcontractors that you would actually be working with. Are they going to be familiar with these better building strategies that you're wanting to use? And then fourth, I would also really consider the feasibility of taking all of that on and what the true intention behind wanting to do that truly is. Like, can you achieve what you're hoping to achieve in like an owner's rep capacity or bringing in someone to be an owner's rep? You might find that there is a much better relationship dynamic than just taking this all on. So I quite honestly very rarely ever see it done successfully. I would say I almost have never seen it done successfully if the homeowner does not have a construction background. But I want every project to be successful. So that's why I'm sharing this episode today. My hope is to discourage you from taking on that role and to empower you to be in a more representative or more of a managing capacity than taking everything on. So hope this episode was helpful for you. Please send it to somebody who is considering being their own GC, or maybe this episode was for you today, and really reconsider having a conversation and maybe doing a bit more vetting with potential contractors, and you might be pleasantly surprised to really find that needle in a haystack of a contractor that could really hit it out of the park for you. So hope this was helpful, and looking forward to seeing you on the next episode.